Hi guys, and thanks for joining me on another episode of White Lotus Blooms TV. I am always so grateful to have you. Today I want to kickstart our series looking at wellness, and I want to focus specifically on emotional and mental wellness as it relates to women in particular. Now, as you can see from my get up, I'm feeling quite fabulous today. I'm wearing my head wrap by Miss Anne Clark. Thank you so much, my love, for hooking me up. I will post a link to all her sites in the description of the video, as well as on my social media sites. And I'm also wearing my luxury body oil from Island Lyric Collection, which is my own creation. And I feel so fabulous. And it's important, before I go any further, for us to, pick out some things that make us feel fabulous, pretty, that make us feel just, in our essence, and to do those things more often, because that's a huge part of wellness and self-care. I want to tell you a story about how I had a meltdown recently, and I'm focusing on meltdowns because the topic of today's video is the magic of the meltdown. Now, anybody who knows me well knows that I tend to pride myself on having it all together, and that doesn't mean that I'm not vulnerable, but it means that I typically don't like to lose control, especially in a very emotional way in public. So some of my close friends have never seen me cry, for example. Now, recently, last month, that changed. I went into an insurance company to do some business, and the agent was telling me some things that it just wasn't working. I'm like, I've driven a long way to come here. My car has been down for the longest time. I don't have enough time to stay to do all the things you're telling me. There's so many other limitations. Like, can you just tell me something else? And she was very professional, but she went on to just let me know that this is the company's policy. It just can't work. And guys, can I tell you that I felt all the emotions that have been, swirling inside. I felt them coming to the surface in a very real way, and I was trying to hold it back, but it just wasn't working. And so I properly bust a ball in the people in the insurance company. Thankfully, my sister friend Dion was there, and she was able to come and converse with the agent when I wasn't able to, and to just, kind of sort things out. And we were talking about it sometime after, and I realized how important it is to really do a video focusing on some of the culprits that steal our sense of wellness, that steal our wellness altogether, especially as women, but let's not even forget our men. Because if we feel like we don't have the license to let go and really be free, imagine them and how they're socialized. Many boys are taught early that it's not masculine to cry, it's not manly to cry. So we cannot in any way, shape, or form leave them out when we're talking about taking steps to better tap into wellness. Now, that whole thinking that I have had, I must confess, about the fact that we have to have it all together. We have to be strong 24/7. What does that even mean? What does it mean to be strong? Because by being strong, does it mean that we can't cry? Does it mean that we can't say, I'm not okay? That's not true. And so I'm sharing this to help us, to suggest to us that we find another way of looking at this whole thing of strength, and looking at this thing of, being well emotionally and mentally. I'm going to focus on some of the culprits, and one of them that I have found, I've seen it in myself, I've heard other women express it, and I've seen it even in clinical practice, is this whole notion of what we call masturbatory thinking. And no, I did not say masturbatory thinking, I said masturbatory, M-U-S-T is the root of that. And just as the term suggests, it's a phrase that has been coined by Albert Ellis, which speaks to the fact that sometimes we cognitively develop these habits where we convince ourselves that, one, we must be a particular way, or that other people must be a particular way, or that the world needs to be in a way other than it actually is. Needless to say, the last two, which is expecting other people to must be different, or the world to must be different, so to speak, those can cause tremendous frustration and disappointment. And the first one, which is holding ourselves to sometimes impossible standards, sometimes irrational standards of we must be, can cause a lot of other psychological, emotional, and relational issues. Now let's look at that closely. I've heard some people say that they must have it all figured out by age 25. Why? Who said so? And why should we take it on? I've heard some women express to me in such desperate terms sometimes that they must have the life, which is to be Mrs. XYZ and to have a child or children by age 28. For some people it's 25. God forbid 30, 32, 35, 40, like, oh my God. And we hold ourselves to these impossible standards sometimes to our own detriment. Many of these types of thinking can cause psychological issues like depression. It can lead in relationships to things like settling. So I'm with this person. This is not my ideal. This doesn't match up to my list. But my age and my clock is telling me that now is the time that I should have these things. I should be settled down. And so I just grab it. And then 5 years later, 8, 10, 15 years later, everything is in shambles because it was never from a place of what truly served me well. It was from a place of trying to get what was sold to me as what is ideal, the package, you know, the image, the ideal life that a woman of my age, stage, stature, whatever should have. And so I want to caution us today to kind of be honest with ourselves and zoom in on what our musts are. What does it mean to have it all together? When I hear of so many people committing suicide, and truth be told, several high-profile persons have committed suicide recently, and it's heartbreaking whenever somebody reaches a point where they feel hopeless, especially given that depression, suicidality, etc. are highly treatable, you know. But I feel like it just shines a very bright light on what it is that we feed our minds and what it is that we hold on to be our realities. Sometimes the facade is so well painted that any confession, admission, expression to the contrary is devastating because it all comes crashing down. There are many people who are having financial problems. Many people. I feel some of you saying amen right now. I can say amen. There are many of us who are having problems with our families. Many of us are having problems figuring out where we really want to be. Do we want to be in a 9-to-5? Do we want to be an entrepreneur? Do we want to be living on the beach and being a kept woman? Do we want to have a man who just says, honey, you don't have to work? What do we really want out of life? And so it's important that we be honest and authentic, even somewhere in our lives, even with a friend or two or three, because sometimes people looking on see your facade and they really buy it. They drink the Kool-Aid. And so sometimes when you want to flex and be more authentic and be more honest about what's really going on, what's really bothering you underneath the facade, even you can come into a place where you feel like you're in a box because we painted the facade so carefully. And that, in my mind, is one of the dangers of these masturbatory thoughts. Because when you buy into it, then you will do almost whatever it takes, sometimes in a very desperate way, to really go after it and to create the image that this is the it. And the cycle just can become very cruel. Other people looking on, get certain impressions. And we sometimes get so deep. We get in too deep, as Junior Gang says. And then what happens? When we really want to come out and show and be honest and authentic, it's difficult for even us. So beware of the masturbatory thinking. I'm going to challenge you further to do a little introspection and highlight what your musts are. Are they sensible? Are they rational? Are they achievable? Are they what you want to be judging or measuring your life against? Okay? I heard one person say to me recently that the only thing they must do is die and be black. Pretty simple. It kind of simplifies life a whole lot when we look at it like that. Okay? So masturbatory thinking is one of the ones I want us to, over time, identify and kick to the curb. There is another one, a very important one, called people-pleasing. Now, people-pleasing is this intense desire to please others and to be nice. And don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking being nice. I'm not knocking being helpful or polite. But people-pleasing is on a whole nother level, where we tie our whole identities into how other people perceive us. And oftentimes, it can come from a place of a deep fear of either rejection or failure. And as we kind of tapped into in the last video, many of these things come from our early relationships with our caregivers, our parents. A child who grows up with a parent who is overly critical can come into a place where they feel this great fear of rejection and or failure. A child who grew up where they were loved conditionally, meaning I am only a good girl or a good boy if I do this or if I don't do this. We can come to identify our worth based on certain conditions, as the term says. And that can have significant impact on how we approach tasks, on how we approach relationships. Think of a child who is always being torn down and criticized for how they do something. Anxiety can start to come into play whenever they even attempt the task. And that can very easily follow us into our teen years and into adulthood. And as you know, anxiety is such a common issue right now for so many people. Where is it coming from? Who taught us that we have to be timid or we have to be fearful when we're attempting to speak in public? Or when we're putting ourselves, quote unquote, out there? Where it come from? It's important to, tease through those things and figure it out so that we don't keep ourselves in a cycle. And speaking of cycles, imagine a child who's loved conditionally and they start the narrative in their headspace that I'm a good girl if, I'm a good girl if, I'm a good boy if. How many of us still have that narrative playing in our heads as it relates to us being in romantic relationships? I am a good girlfriend if I show up like, if I operate in this way, if I give in a certain manner. And sometimes these things are outside of our comfort zones, meaning I don't feel like this is who I truly am, but my partner significantly likes this. And so I am a good girlfriend to him because of this. And so we bend ourselves up. We get into these traps of pleasing other over pleasing self. And it can lead to, over time, it can lead to depression. It can lead to us being passive aggressive or easily developing resentment to even these people. Silent resentment is what oftentimes feeds into passive aggressive behavior, because we're too nice to actually say what we're really thinking. So we start to do it in a kind of low-key, undercover way, and this can obviously affect the relationship. And so it's so critical for us to just constantly introspect, and I'll not stop saying it for the entire series. We have to be willing to look inward regardless of what we see, regardless of what we may be afraid of, because if we don't look, we won't know what we're not doing in the best way and what we can do better at. Okay? So people pleasing on a whole is something that we have to really identify if we have it, and I would encourage us to start to strip it away. What is so wrong with saying to someone, no, I'm not able to, without an apology? Why are you sorry? You can't do it. Why are you sorry that you can't do it? Are you sorry? Sometimes we're not sorry, but we feel the need to say, I'm so sorry, but I can't make it to the event this evening, Sometimes we create lies to make it look more than what it is. Sometimes we can't go because we really don't feel like it's serving us. So we need to develop that level of assertiveness, that level of, that level of being settled in ourselves, where we can say, I won't be able to attend, perhaps another time. Thank you for the invitation, take care. To be upfront about it and not have these fears of people rejecting us, not have these fears of people thinking bad things about us. A reality that many of us need to embrace right this second is that we are not for everybody. We are not everybody's cup of tea. And we don't have to be. We're one person who, according to my belief system, we're put here for a particular purpose. Let's be about that. It's not so critical that everybody likes us, because that will never be the case. And the sooner we disabuse ourselves of this, is the sooner many of us can go on to start living lives filled with wellness. Let it go. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't help us. It actually significantly hinders and stresses us out. Let's let it go. That's people pleasing. Let's look quickly at this concept of the imposter syndrome that I know I suffer from, and I'm working through it. What is the imposter syndrome? It's this set of thoughts in our head that can convince us that we need to downplay our accomplishments. It sometimes tells us in the dead of night that, people soon find out that you're not really as good as you say you are. And that fear of being found out is such a huge part of it, that we can walk around literally crippled, literally afraid to step into our lives and to truly shine, because we're wondering, what will people think, will they really see through my flaws and my cracks, and so that I'm not really as good at this thing as I, presume to be. that is a crippling one. For many people, the reason why they downplay, their accomplishments is because sometimes it comes so naturally to you that you convince yourself that you're not really good at it. It just comes naturally. What is wrong with something coming naturally for you? I'm an excellent listener. It just comes naturally. It's a thing. It's a thing that I actually professionally I charge for. I charge to be a good listener because many people they need that in an effort to get to their own place of emotional wellness. Suppose you're a good strategist. It comes naturally, but you should not in any way downplay it because you didn't struggle to acquire it. That is a trick that we buy into all too often. Okay, guys? We need to start doing the work and just letting go of some of these things that do not make us any better. We are too attached to the idea of struggle. If I didn't and work so hard to get it, then I shouldn't celebrate it. No. In fact, one of my affirmations now is that I live a life of ease. Why should I struggle for everything? If bad things can just reach you just like that, if I can wake up one morning and get horrible news, if I can wake up one morning and have my life in particular being forever changed by a diagnosis of breast cancer, why can't I wake up tomorrow morning and just have beautiful things come to me easily? Why? There is no reason for that. And so this is just an introductory, video to start the process of identifying some of the things that, can be the culprits in robbing us of our joy, in robbing us of lives of wellness. I want you to shoot me your comments. Let me know how this video sat with you. Do you find it to be helpful, to be truthful or relevant? Let me know what else you think can be some of the culprits that rob us of wellness. Another one I need to do an entire video on by itself is self-care. Because many of us think self-care is all about lighting candles and playing music. But self-care can be turning down an invitation because you really don't want to be there. And for the whole time that you will be there, if you go, you're going to feel guilty, you're going to feel unsettled, you're going to feel unhappy, etc. Sometimes self-care is turning your phone off. No explanation, no, pre-notice. Just put it off, put it on airplane mode, and just unplug. Just let go of that desire to be available every time somebody needs to reach you. That's a big one. So look out for the other videos in the sub-series of wellness under the broader series of White Lotus Blooms TV. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to your feedback as always, and I look forward to continuing to share with you in this space. Lots of love. Continue to be well.